morning. Members will be at their seats. Clerks open the roll and you may record your presence. Please give rise and attention to our guest chaplain, Gil Aikens from Brown County Native American Church, guest of Representative Vickers, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Vickers.
Thank you, Creator God, for this beautiful day and all you have blessed us with. Bless the leaders in the state of Kansas with wise minds for the decisions they are here to make. Let their decisions continue to improve the Kansas communities and lives for all nationalities. In Jesus' name. God be with you and have a seat with another again.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does every member of the conference need to record his or her presence? Clerk will close the roll and take the attendance. On a point of personal privilege, the Speaker recognizes Representative Vickers.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Today is Kansas Native American Legislative Day. This is a day to honor the government-to-government relationship between our 4 tribes of Kansas and the state. Today we have tribal leaders that are present today, and if they could just raise their hand, from the Second Hawks Nation and the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes in the United States, each with their own culture, spirituality, traditions, and language. In the late 19th century, tribes were restricted to reservations. Many Native American children were taken to boarding schools where they were required to speak only English and persecuted for speaking their tribal language. As a result of this horrifying atrocity, Native American languages were dead or dying. By the late 20th century, more than half of Native Americans in the U.S. lived in urban areas, where English was their everyday language. Today, the few remaining Native American languages are are usually only spoken by our tribal elders. And I would also like to recognize our tribal elders that are sitting to the side over here who led our beautiful prayer this morning, as well as some in the gallery. However, this trend is being reversed by the younger generation, many who have taken it upon themselves to learn and preserve their tribal language. Today I want to showcase two tribal youth, Gerald Wawasik Jr. from the Sac Fox Nation of Kansas. He traveled a long ways to be here today. And Panache Wabansi from the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. They've both taken it upon themselves to learn their native tongue. They understand the importance of preserving their culture for future generations. Please join me in recognizing them and encouraging them to continue their culture. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I would like my remarks to be spread across the journal. Biboham.
Without objection, so ordered. On a point of personal privilege, the Speaker would recognize Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, it's my honor to introduce you to the Rose Hill High School two-time state volleyball champions. These young women, led by head coach Melissa Segovia, clinched the 2016 and the 2017 4A Division I state volleyball championship. This highly decorated team has accumulated a host of awards, including 4 players making the 4A Division I state tournament team, 4 receiving the Kansas Volleyball Association 4A Division I All-State Honors, with 1 being named Co-Player of the Year, and 2 players receiving the Wichita Eagle All-Metro Team distinction, 1 hitter and 1 setter. Almost every member of this group of extraordinary young women athletes holds an all-time career record or single match record in Rose Hill volleyball. In addition, head coach Segovia was named Kansas Volleyball Association 4A Division I Volleyball Coach of the Year both in 2016 and in 2017. Segovia attributes success to the support of the families, the administration, the staff, and the community, and of course the tireless efforts put forth by all of these girls, especially the seniors, who set the tone for the season. In the coach's own words, she said players realize that there's a lot that goes into a championship. Hard work, dedication, mental fortitude, and simply showing up every day. That goes a long way to build a winning team. Honored guests, please wave when I introduce your name so we may honor your achievement. For the players, Emily Adler, Riley Baker, Peyton Burke, Hunter Gunnarsson, Morgan Gunnarsson, Sarah Lazar, Brecken Myers, Haley Thrush, Gracie Brandrell, Emily Witt, Danielle Yardley, and for our head coach, Melissa Segovia, and our assistant coach, Elaine Witt. And also, we have other players and parents in the gallery that I had permission to say hello to, so we're so glad that you all are here. Fellow members of the House, will you stand and join me in congratulating the Rose Hill High School Volleyball Team 2016-2017 Division I State Volleyball Champions. the journal. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Introductions of bills and concurrent resolutions. Clerk will read.
Council number 2653 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning income tax related credits, educational expenses made by certain school employees. Council number 2654 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning income tax related credits, expenses made by colleges for health or education facilities. Council number 2655 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning income taxation related to credits, fitness facility membership fees. Council number 2656 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning property taxation relating to recreational vehicles. Council number 2657 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning income tax related to credit, salary increases to Kansas employees. Council number 2658 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning sales taxation relating to exemption certain food and food ingredients. Council number 2659 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning sales and compensating use tax related to the sale of certain motor vehicles, rate of tax. Council number 2660 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning property taxation relating to certain personal property, motor vehicles, or watercraft. Council number 2661 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning income taxation relating to rates of corporations. Council number 2662 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act concerning the Kansas Board of Barbering relating to fees, increasing the fees for licenses and examinations. Council number 2663 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act enacting the Care Medicaid Ombudsman Act, providing for the powers, duties, and functions of the state Care Medicaid Ombudsman. Council number 2664 by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act establishing a task force on social work mobility and workforce development, membership and scope of study, submission of reports and recommendations. Council number 2665 by the Committee on Water and Environment, an act concerning water, establishing a water law study commission. Council number 2666 by Representatives Owsley and Gallagher, an act concerning public assistance relating to cash assistance, food assistance, medical assistance, and child care subsidy. Council number 2667 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning insurance relating to coverage of abortion services. Council number 2668 by Representatives Pittman, Clayton, and others, an act concerning sales taxation relating to exemptions, farm products sold at farmers markets. Council number 2669 by Representatives Lasgood and others, an act concerning insurance relating to oil and gas operations, relating to operators of Class 2 injection wells requiring liability insurance coverage for induced seismicity damages. Council number 2670 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning real property relating to protests and exemptions from property or ad valorem taxes. Council number 2671 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning sales and compensating use tax relating to exemptions in the Care Connection Incorporated. Council number 2672 by Representatives Lasgood and others, an act concerning oil and gas relating to the State Corporation Commission, powers and duties, requirements for certain injection wells, creating the Citizens Injection Well Board, creating the Injection Well and Induced Seismicity Fund. Council number 2673 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning elections dealing with voter registration. Council number 2674 by the Committee on Taxation, an act concerning health and healthcare, relating to the practice of telemedicine, certain state licensing agencies, establishing coverage parity between in-person telemedical medicine delivered healthcare services and providers. Council number 2675 by Representative Pittman, an act concerning elections relating to the interstate voter registration cross-check program. Council number 2677 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act relating to the use of state appropriated monies to lobby on gun control issues. Council concurrent resolution number 5024 by Representative Hodge, a proposition to amend Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas by adding a new section thereto concerning the taxation of certain residential property.
Messages from the Senate, the clerk will read.
Announcing adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 5023 and concurrent resolution providing for a joint session of the Senate and House Representatives for the purpose of hearing a message from the Governor. following escorts were appointed: to escort the governor, Senators Hardy and Vascato; to escort the Supreme Court, Senators Hildebrand and Petty. Announcing passage of Senate Bills 256, 283, 284, 292, and 335. Senate Bill number 256 by Senator Dahl, an act designating a portion of the United States Highway 50 as Sergeant Greg Stiemel and Private First Class Richard Conradi Memorial Highway. Senate Bill number 283 by the Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act pursuing the regulation of financial institutions relating to trust companies, Office of the State Bank Commissioner, powers, duties, and experience of certain employees. Senate Bill number 284 by the Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning financial institutions, updating the Kansas Money Transmitter Act. Senate Bill number 292 by the Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning financial institutions relating to credit unions pertaining to the expulsion of members. Senate Bill number 335 by the Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, an act concerning financial institutions relating to banks and banking, including savings and loan associations and saving banks and the state banking code.
House Bill 2474 appears on the consent calendar for the third day. Is there objection? Is there objection? Seeing none, it'll be advanced to final action. House Bill 2547 appears on the consent calendar for the third day. Is there objection? There is objection. It'll be moved to that, it'll be placed on that order of business, general orders. Final action, clerk will read.
House Bill number 2474 by the Committee on Judiciary, and that concerning the Kansas Family Law Code relating to marriage notification by court to the Secretary of Health and Environment.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2474. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record his or her vote? Clerk will close the roll. Did any member desire to explain his or her vote? Did any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Schwab votes aye. Further change? Seeing none, 122 voting in favor and none opposed to the passage of House Bill 2474, the same having received constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. Clerk will record the vote. Clerk will read.
House Bill number 2470 by the Committee on Federal State Affairs, and that concerning alcoholic beverages dealing with microbreweries.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2470. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record his or her vote? Clerk will close the roll. Did any member desire to explain his or her vote? Did any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 121 voting in favor, 2 opposed to the passage of House Bill 2470. The same having received a constitutional majority is hereby declared passed. Clerk will record the vote. Majority Leader Heinemann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of general orders.
You heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. No saying. Motion passes. For the purposes of chairing the Committee of the Whole, the Speaker appoints Representative Landry.
Okay, I would be remiss if I didn't say go Shots, great game last night. And then a little shout out to my friend, representative who I can't mention, KU won as well, so good game for basketball. Now we can get for the first order of business, we have House Bill 2502, and the chair will recognize Representative Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were no committee amendments. Proceed. 2502 is a trailer bill. It follows up a piece of legislation that we passed last year. And as a bit of a memory refresher for us, you will remember Senate Bill 13, which I like to refer to as the Great Beer Compromise of 2017. And basically, we brought the uncorked people together with the anti-uncorkers, and we asked them to work out a compromise language. And basically, the compromise was they would allow beer sales of 6 points in alcohol content at CMD licensees, and in return, then the retail liquor stores would have the ability to sell other items. Okay, so that brings us up to speed, except in the final days, right before we heard this debate on the floor and before we voted on it, we were approached by the League of Kansas Municipalities.
We can have a little more quiet on the floor and be good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you throwing that rowdies. The League of Kansas Municipalities came to us and expressed a concern about the deviation of the tax issue. Also, we were approached by ABC saying that there were some concerns with what was written in the bill as to their authority. Not wanting to mess up the tenuous agreement that we had between these parties, we just asked if we could address it next year. We promised that it would be addressed, and therefore that's why we're here now, as we're keeping those promises. So the trailer bill does a couple things. It addresses the ABC issues, one of which was Senate Bill 13 had placed the supervision of the CMB retailers under the umbrella of the ABC, but it really had no authority for civil enforcement. So 2502 imposes the ability for ABC to levy fines against the CMB retailers who are out of compliance on a number of issues. It also allows them to withhold the ABC stamp to a cereal malt beverage license. And it also addresses sort of an ambiguity in the language about the report. The ABC is to issue a report 10 years out, and they would report to the Legislature in 2029 about the
Finally, the piece on the tax issue is that the 2502 says that the product is taxed at the venue. So in other words, if you're selling a 12-pack of Bud Light at a CMB retailer, you will then be charged sales tax that will be collected and remitted to the state and ultimately to the municipalities. If that same 12-pack of Bud Light is sold at a retail liquor store, then it would be charged the traditional 8% enforcement fee. We had several opponents, most of which were the coalition of people bringing this agreement together. No opponents, and it passed the committee unanimously. With that, I would be happy to stand for questions, Madam Chair.
Does anyone wish to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Sedgwick, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The chairman of the committee in which this bill came from did a very good job explaining the ins and outs of it. I do want to just once again highlight that those who represent both sides of the issue on court did come together and were proponents for this bill, and there was no opponents. Therefore, I ask that you join me in voting yes. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wyandotte, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, someone that opposed this bill throughout the years, it wasn't a bad compromise, but I think with that, I would urge the body to vote for it. That's it. Thank
We always enjoy a little bit of levity. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Mason, you may vote.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. This does clear up a lot of issues as far as Senate Bill 13, and it does ensure that our respective counties and municipalities will maintain their revenue. So with that, Madam Chair, I move that when the committee rises and reports, we would report House Bill 2502 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Mason to report House Bill 2502 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2446, the chair will recognize Representative Esau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee made an amendment. I move the adoption of the committee report.
The motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. HB 2446 as amended would allow a designation of a ranking minority member to the Joint Committee on Kansas Security and to the Joint Committee on Information Technology. The ranking minority member of the Joint Committee on Kansas Security would be a representative member selected by the minority leader of the House of Representatives in odd number years, and a senator member selected by the minority leader of the Senate in even number years. The ranking minority member of the Joint Committee on Information Technology would be from the same chamber as the Joint Committee's chairperson and would be elected by the members of the Joint Committee each year. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and appreciate the explanation from the representative. He did a good job in explaining, and I support this bill. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll join me.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee writes it reports House Bill 2446 favorably.
You've heard the motion by Representative Esau to report House Bill 2446 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2432
you, Madam Chair. House Bill 2438 came out of Committee of Federal and State Affairs. This bill would prohibit, and there were no amendments, by the way, this bill would prohibit state agencies from contracting with a vendor on an information technology project if that vendor prepared or assisted with the preparation of the program statement, the project planning documents, or any other project plans prepared prior to approval of the project by the Chief Information Technology Officer of the relevant branch of government. It would apply to projects that have estimated cumulative costs of over $5 million, and it does include an exemption that would, a waiver provision that would allow the Chief Information Technology Officer of the appropriate branch to waive the requirements for reasons that may pertain specific to the case. The bill was pre-filed at the request of the Legislative Post Audit Committee, and in testimony in committee, our Legislative Post Auditor came to provide testimony. It was friendly neutral. They don't normally get involved taking sides, but believe this represents good project management practices. Other than that, we had no conferees either opposed or in favor of. And in terms of fiscal note, there really was no cost associated with this at this time because none of the branches surveyed have projects in the pipeline. But we do think this is good business practice that ought to be put in place. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the bill? The chair will recognize the gentleman from Wyandotte, representing Bruce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The representative did a good job explaining this bill. Got a little bit complicated in committee. She did clarify the way that it's going to stand. The Post Audit didn't bring this to us as they felt it was necessary to get some clarification on some IT issues. And so I do support this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair will recognize the gentleman from Johnson, representing Parker, on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the carrier of the bill, stand for a couple of questions. My understanding is a bill that has to deal with qualifications or restrictions on contracts with technology companies.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, I have an amendment.
The amendment appears long. Would you like to explain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the privilege of sitting in on the House Government Technology and Security Committee for a colleague, and there was a presentation on the concept of net neutrality recently. I appreciated in the testimony that day that there is large agreement on what the standards of net neutrality are, both between consumers of the internet and by the telecom companies. In fact, most of the telecom companies have said that they are against blocking of legal content, throttling, unfair discrimination, and transparency in our customer practices. The disagreement at this point seems to be the proper regulatory authority. There was a recent change in Washington, D.C. with the FCC, moving it from one framework to another. But there seems to be universal agreement that the ideal solution would be Congress to enact a new regulatory modern framework for principles of net neutrality. But we all know that the Congress in Washington, D.C. does not move particularly fast. And so in this case, I have an amendment that would set up these standards only for ISPs that are contracting with the state of Kansas. And really my aim is that since all of these telecom industries, AT&T, CenturyLink, Charter, Comcast, Cox, US Telecom, agree on those four major principles: no blocking of legal content, no throttling, no unfair discrimination, and to have transparency in their customer practices, that we would protect them from less scrupulous telecom groups that might try to undercut them or find a market edge by not obeying those standards that are so universally agreed upon. So again, my amendment simply says that those companies that have already promised that these are the standards they want to uphold, that they would just put that forward in writing and show it transparently when contracting with the state of Kansas. With that, I stand for questions.
Is there objection to waiving the reading of the amendment? There is objection. The clerk will read.
Page 1, following line 6, by inserting new section 1A, the legislature finds and declares that, number 1, the state of Kansas is a significant purchaser of internet services. Number 2, implementation of the principles of net neutrality is necessary for the state to ensure efficient procurement of goods and services and to ensure delivery.
We are waiving the reading of the amendment. Representative may continue. Chair recognizes Representative Highland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment appears to be in conflict with our original bill, therefore I challenge the germaneness of this amendment.
With the Rules Chair, Representative Finch, make a ruling on the germaneness of Representative Parker's amendment to House Bill 2438.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the body. The Rules Committee has met and considered the challenge to germaneness of the amendment. The underlying subject matter of the bill regulates contracts between the state and IT vendors. The amendment also tries to regulate that relationship and determine the conditions under which a vendor must act in order to have a contract for information technology services with the state. We do find that it's the same subject matter and associated topics, and there are 2 points of contact between the amendment and the bill, and therefore the amendment is germane.
We are back on the amendment. Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment on House Bill 2438? Chair recognizes the gentleman from Johnson, representing Brooklyn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a really big issue, and I think it's a big enough issue that warrants a proper public hearing in committee. Federal and State Affairs is an exempt committee. I would be interested in helping to move that along. If this had been brought to my attention sooner, I would have helped to do that. But today, as an amendment on the floor, given the complexities of it, I'm going to have to oppose the addition of the amendment to the bill. The bill itself is something that passed unanimously out of post-audit committee and is actually pretty narrow in scope. So recognizing the germaneness and the value of public discussion, I get why this is a topic for discussion, but I would appreciate the opportunity to have a more fully realized discussion through the proper committee process.
Representative Sherman, did you wish to speak on the amendment? On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Reno, Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I oppose this amendment also because I think the committee processes should be Chair, Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. And I think these ought to be vetted on amendments before they're just presented on the floor. That way everybody gets it. So I urge you to oppose this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes Representative Hauser and Chair Key.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would the carrier of the amendment please come to the question? Does this amendment attempt to, will our FCC net neutrality be like overriding the FCC net neutrality?
You're asking if the federal ruling...
Right. Are we going to like, I'm a 10th Amendment resolution guy, and so will this be exercising our state's rights and over the Federal Communications Commission?
I think the way that this is narrowly crafted, and this is a couple of states have gone about it in this way of just regulating contracts with the state. If we were to try and impose these rules on every consumer in the state of Kansas, I believe that would be running against the FCC ruling. But I believe this narrow draft does not run into their rules, since it is only regulating contracts with the state.
Thank you very much. This is an intriguing topic. I think it deserves a lot more debate. I'll probably be voting against it. But I would like to point out that just recently, I want to see where this comes out, because we're dealing with the states versus the feds. And just recently, we have an issue with CBD oil, where our Attorney General said that the state's laws trump the federal laws. The federal laws allow CBD oil for sale. So, and then you go back to the Second Amendment Protection Act, where we had the boys in Chinook that had the silencers. They were arrested, and every gun that was made in the state of Kansas was no longer available for the feds couldn't do anything about it. Yet, at that time, the Attorney General said, no, fed law trumps state law. So, which is the state law trumps state law every time, which it should, or the other way around. So we got to make up our mind. Like I said, this is an interesting topic. I think we should debate it later, but I think I'll be opposing it this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Dickinson, Representative Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do rise in opposition to the amendment. I will invite my colleagues to draw the amendment.
That state is open.
You are welcome to give it a revise or introduce the bill. And if the hearing is given, then we'll vet it. With this, I think it could be a good deal, but I don't know that. Anytime you deal with the federal government, we have problems. Trying to get everything working together. So I would ask the body to vote against the amendment. We are open for business at 9 o'clock in the morning. With that, thank you, Madam Chairman.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Sedgwick, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, let's clarify what the amendment does. What it says is when the state of Kansas contracts for internet services, there are 4 protocols that ensures net neutrality that have to be followed before we will contract with that company for internet services. And where do we get those 4 protocols? From the companies that do business in Kansas. You heard the representative, there are those radical groups like Cox or AT&T. The folks that say these are the things that determine net neutrality. So what he's trying to do is use the state's buying power to send the message to Kansans and to our somewhat dim-witted friends in Washington that we believe that net neutrality is very, very important, that every Kansan have access to fast internet services, and the company shouldn't be able to cherry pick and charge some consumers more money to get faster service and others who don't have as much money slower services. This is a consumer protection bill. It is clearly within our purview, and I find it always interesting when the majority party comes down and says, oh my God, there wasn't a bill. Oh my God, we didn't have a committee hearing. We're on 2,678. That's the number that will be read into the next bill. We have had Medicaid expansion that got 81 votes on this floor and has never been kicked out of the committee because the chairman of Health and House doesn't like it. We have a half a dozen workplace safety bills in Labor and Commerce that haven't even been given a debate because the chairman of Labor and Commerce don't like them. Okay? Now that's okay for you to vote against those ideas. But to stifle the process and prevent those bills from coming to a vote and then walk down here and say, oh, protect the process. Oh, please don't violate the process. Well, let me explain to you something. One of the rules allow for amendments from this podium on bills. That's part of the process. It's a good part. If you're ever in the minority, you'll understand why that's so important, the ability to bring your idea. This is a good idea. It's incredibly popular for people who use services of internet, and all it says is that the state of Kansas will clearly say that we will not buy internet services from companies that cherry pick. We will follow the protocols of the established carriers to protect internet neutrality, and I support the amendment.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Sedgwick, Representative Carpenter.
Will the representative stand for questions? Good. All right, great. So it has been asked, or you brought up 4 companies that here in Kansas, or is there more than
Well, so the statement that this legislation, or this amendment is based on is from Broadband for America, and the members are listed on here: AT&T, CenturyLink, Charta, CTIA, Comcast, Cox, ONCTA, TIA, and US Telecom.
Okay. So Have you talked to any of these companies about your amendment or the language of your amendment? Do they support it?
Well, it's based entirely on practices that they say they are already committed to doing. So really the intention of the amendment is to protect the companies that are acting in good faith right now from competitors who may not agree to uphold those high standards.
But as of right now, those companies haven't had any input on your bill or your amendment.
As of now, all of those companies are on the record saying they do not support blocking illegal content, throttling, unfair discrimination, and that they are for transparency in their customer practices.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Representative. So I was doing a little bit of Wikipedia, going around on Wikipedia, and I'm not sure if everybody in the body, let's just break the debate down just one more level here, because I don't know if everybody knows what net neutrality is. And so net neutrality is the principle that government should mandate internet service providers to treat all data on the internet the same and not discriminate or charge differently by the user, content, website, platform, application, type of equipment, or method of communication. Down towards the bottom here it says that for instance, under these principles, internet service providers are unable to deliver content tailored to the capabilities of a specific device or user, offer free services, or intentionally block, slow down, or charge money for specific websites and online content. Well, for some of those, I can see how maybe this could potentially be a problem for some of those companies if they wanted to offer something to their customers. I don't know how this impacts those companies, and I would like to hear from them. So at this point, I'm going to be opposing this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, the chair will recognize the gentleman from Douglas, Representative Highberger, on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of what I want to say here today is already been said, so I'll keep it brief. I think anybody who's been here for a while knows there are a lot of good ideas around here that never see the light of day. So without the commitment for a hearing on this bill, I would encourage you to support it today if you like the idea. And I think it's a good idea. I think what we're doing doesn't contradict federal law in any way. In fact, we're doing what the federal FCC wants us to do, is to use our decision making as consumers to pick the product we want. And I think picking a product from an ISP that does not discriminate against content from any Kansas use because of good policy, we should encourage it. If we were to contract as a state with an ISP that does not recognize net neutrality, it could be our content that doesn't get fired and gets pushed out on the So again, without a commitment for a hearing on this, I think that today is the way to vote on it. Thank you.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Harvey, Representative Hodge.
Would the carrier of the amendment state the question?
Absolutely.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, this is this language that you used been approved anywhere else?
Through executive order, it is the policy of the state of Montana. It is also, I believe, been proposed in the state of New York. I'm not sure where it is in the process in New York.
Thank you. So it's been approved other places?
Yes, this is current practice in Montana.
Thank you. Also, can you explain differences, if any, regarding the rural versus city situation?
Well, in this case, it would offer the same protections to internet users, whether rural or in the city, that their content, especially this affects businesses, that you are making sure that your content will not be discriminated against by your internet service provider. Many of these are large companies. They could own competitors for your company. They are not allowed to slow down traffic to your business's website. They are not allowed to pick and choose what content gets a fast lane or a slow lane, so to speak.
Thank you. I support this amendment. It's a good idea. It's one of those things that we can put onto a bill, and this process is not over. It goes to another body so they can look at it and see if it's actually okay. They can have hearings on it. Remember, folks, we are free to vote for good ideas. Remember that. Things don't always have to be red and blue, or R&D, or liberal, conservative. They can, or right and left. They can be right or wrong. We can vote for the right thing. I was told when I first got here that I'm free to vote for the right thing. That should be my default. That shouldn't be nervous about doing that. I should be doing that, period. So should you. This is a good idea. This keeps the feds out of our stuff. We can protect our internet here or in the country. So I encourage you to vote for this.
On the amendment, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Johnson, Representative Brooker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies, colleagues, but I do, as I've had time to read the amendment, I have concerns that there are certain state functions that represent services that we probably would want to prioritize, and that would be in the realm of emergency management, among other things. So that is on my list of concerns for why I think that doing this on the fly and not being able to have the discussion in our committee, which we've had an invitation to have, is of concern today. I think there are, if we have some major event happen, I would certainly want 911 to take priority to a YouTube kitten video. So I think these are issues that deserve a serious discussion in committee, so I ask for you to oppose the amendment.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Sedgwick, Representative Carmichael, on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just very briefly, in response to my colleague's concern about 911 service, as a matter of fact, we discussed that very issue this morning in Utilities Committee with Mike Scott, whose company is responsible for the implementation of FirstNet, and it already has the priority. And to the extent there is excess capacity under the FirstNet agreement, federal law as well as the contract, they have the right to usurp and use any portion of the commercial FirstNet capability in time of emergency or 911 use. So I hope that satisfies the concern. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the Parker amendment? Seeing none, Representative Parker, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to reiterate, this amendment is drafted based on the language of the telecom industry. These are practices that are already in place. All we are doing is making sure that the companies that contract with the state of Kansas live up to the standard that the telecom industry has set. This protects all of those companies who have said they want to do these things, that they are doing these things, from competitors who may be less scrupulous than them. If we pass this amendment in the underlying bill today, it does not become law tomorrow. It will go to the Senate. It will have hearings over there, just like what we did last Thursday in the same body. By almost 2/3 margin, we passed significant changes to gun laws in the state of Kansas by this exact same method. This is not a complicated issue. It's drawn as simply as possible. And again, it reinforces the current practices that the telecom industries already stand behind. So with that, I will close on my amendment and ask for your support.
You've heard the motion by Representative Parker to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. Division has been requested. Clerk will open the roll, and you may vote. A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, a roll call is ordered. The clerk will open the roll and may record your vote. Has everyone had an opportunity to vote? Clerk will close the roll. Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 43 having voted in favor and 78 against, the motion passes, or fails, excuse me. Clerk will record the vote. Back on the bill, the
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill, now that it's, we've dealt with the other issue, this bill makes a lot of sense. When we brought it out of post-audit committee, we're just saying that if the state agencies want to have a project that a vendor can't be part of the planning process, and that's just a prudent thing to do, because a vendor, if they were part of the planning process, could plan a strategy that they would only be able to bid on, or they might insert into the planning some things that maybe other vendors would say weren't necessary. So we do have oversight. The chief information officer for the state can waive this if they think there's a reason for it. But otherwise, I think it's good policy, and post-audit thought it made good sense because it really removes some potentially problematic situations from our process of creating projects. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Rooker, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports, we report House Bill 2438 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Rooker to report House Bill 2438 favorably. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader Hyde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes.
Clerk, read the committee of the whole report.
Speaker, your committee of the whole recommends House Bills 2502 and 2438 be passed. House Bill 2446 be passed as amended.
Representative Langren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of the committee report.
You heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion passes. The report is adopted. Reports of standing committees. Clerk will read.
Committee on Local Government recommends House Bill 2505 be passed. Committee on Transportation recommends House Bill 2531 be passed because the committee is the opinion the bill was a non-controversial nature be placed on the consent calendar. Committee on Transportation recommends House Bill 2486 be passed.
Is there any objection to return that order of business? Introduction of bills. See none. Clerk will read.
House Bill number 2678 by the Committee on Transportation and Act concerning motor vehicles relating to distinctive license plates providing for the Choose Life license plate. House Bill number 2679 by Representative Parker, an act enacting the Kansas Contraceptive Equity Act providing insurance coverage for contraceptives. House Bill number 2680 by Representative Parker, an act concerning elections related to voter registration. House Bill number 2681 by Representative Parker, an act concerning the legislature relating to voter requirements requiring the recording of certain votes when in standing committees and committee of the whole. House Bill number 2682 by Representatives Parker, Clayton, and others, an act concerning advanced telecommunication services relating to internet service providers and net neutrality. House Bill number 2683 by Representative Parker, an act concerning elections relating to voter registration. House Bill number 2684 by Representatives Parker and Carmichael, an act concerning certain state agencies relating to redaction of social security numbers. House Bill number 2685 by Representatives Ballard, Bishop, and others, an act concerning firearms relating to Personal and Family Protection Act relating to exemptions for post-secondary educational institutions. House Bill number 2686 by Representatives Pittman and Deere, an act making and concerning appropriations for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2019 for the Department of Corrections. House Bill number 2687 by Representatives Humphreys, Arnberger, and others, an act concerning children and minors, creating Adoption Protection Act, relating to the placement of children for foster care or adoption related to religious freedoms of private entities providing such placement services. House Bill number 2688 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act establishing the Behavioral Health Task Force. House Bill number 2689 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning the judicial branch relating to salaries of justices, judges, and non-judicial employees, making concerning appropriations for fiscal year in June 30, 2019. House Bill number 2690 by the Committee on Education, an act concerning school districts, creating the Kansas School Financial Transparency Act. House Bill number 2691 by the Committee on Water and Environment, and act concerning water relating to the Division of Water Resources, the Department of Agriculture, relating to notification requirements for multi-year flex accounts. House Bill number 2692 by the Committee on Education, an act concerning school districts relating to students diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. House Bill number 2693 by Representative Tarwater, an act concerning state finance related to budget bills introduced by the legislature and the governor's budget report requiring appropriation of federal money report by the director of the budget. House Bill number 2694 by Representative Hodge, an act concerning education, creating Community Leaders Service Act. House Bill number 2695 by Representative Holscher, Grimm, and others, an act concerning sexual harassment claims related to state monies used for settlements, non-disclosure agreements. House Bill number 2696 by Representative Whipple, an act concerning employment related to non-disclosure agreements, allegations of sexual harassment. House Bill number 2697 by the Committee on K-12 Education Budget, an act concerning education relating to the Kansas School Equity and Enhancement Act relating to calculation of transportation rates. House Bill number 2698 by Representative Heiberger, an act concerning the state treasurer relating to financial institutions, establishing the Kansas Children's Savings Account Program. Establishing the Kansas Children's Savings Account Program Trust Fund, Kansas Children's Savings Account Program Expense Fund. House Bill number 2699 by Representatives Burrows and others, an act concerning the legislature relating to bills prohibiting amendment, striking all material and inserting new material. House Bill number 2700 by Representative Esau, an act concerning public records regarding disclosure of personal information. House Bill number 2701 by the Committee on Energy and Utilities and Telecommunications, and act concerning broadband, creating the statewide broadband expansion task force relating to expansion of broadband services. House Bill number 2702 by the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, and act concerning meteorological evaluation towers relating to reporting requirements. House Bill number 2703 by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, and act concerning workers' compensation relating to discrimination and functional impairment using American Medical Association guides. House Bill number 2704 by Representatives Gallagher, Baker, and others, and act concerning adult care homes requiring written informed consent before administering an antipsychotic medication to an adult care home resident. House Bill number 2705 by the Committee on Judiciary, and act concerning health care providers relating to peer review, privileged information. House Bill number 2706 by the Committee on Judiciary, and act concerning sexual assault examinations relating to child advocacy centers. House Bill number 2707 by the Committee on Judiciary, and act concerning charitable organizations relating to registration transfer from Secretary of State to the Attorney General. House Bill number 2708 by the Committee on Judiciary, and act concerning criminal procedure relating to the Attorney General and conversion agreements. House Bill number 2709 by the Committee on Judiciary, and act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to legal lascivious behavior. House Bill number 2710 by Representative Whipple, an act concerning employees relating to protection of victims of domestic violence. House Bill number 2711 by Representative Whipple, an act concerning judicial, legislative, and executive state employees relating to wage discrimination based on gender, applications for employment to state agencies. House Bill number 2712 by Representative Whipple, an act concerning employment relating to maternity benefits. House Bill number 2713 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, and act concerning bail enforcement agents relating to continuing education, the Attorney General. House Bill number 2714 by Representative Judge Jenkins, an act creating the Kansas City Library District. House Bill number 2715 by Representative Judge Jenkins, an act concerning an abandoned cemetery. House Concurrent Resolution number 5025 by the Committee on Labor, Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, and proposition to repeal Section 12 of Article 15 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas relating to membership or non-membership in labor organizations.
we're going to sit tight. We got about 1 or 2 more bills coming up downstairs. And since today's the last day that are introduced bills, we're just going to kind of stand at ease to those 2 bills coming up. Bonnie, just trying to be efficient while we're waiting for this. We'll go ahead and start with announcements, and we'll go back to that order of business, introduction of bills. So, announcements, Representative Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. We do have a special guest speech today at 3 o'clock here in the chamber. So House Judiciary, we will be meeting 9 minutes after adjournment. 9 minutes, normal room. We have 1 bill hearing today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Victors.
South Central delegation, we are still having lunch and we're meeting in room 152 South. That is South Central delegation, 152 South. We're still meeting and we have lunch down there, ready to go after we are finished here on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. For Democrats, we will have Thursday Summit in our regular room, 152 South, and our speaker will be Dr. Greg Lincoln, our Health Officer and Medicaid Medical Director from the Department of Health and Environment, and we'll be discussing opioids. Thank you.
Representative Francis.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Immediately following adjournment, Rural Caucus will meet in 159 South. Our speaker today is Professor Alan Featherstone. He's an ag economist at KSU, and I hear he gives a really great talk about what the future of the Kansas ag economy is. So hope to see you there. We've got hamburgers, so I heard they're really good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Schroeder.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Appreciate that. Well, tomorrow morning is Thursday morning, and so we have our prayer breakfast in the morning in 142 South at 7 a.m. The speaker tomorrow is a young man by the name of Emmanuel Herring. He's called Pastor in Training at the New Indians Baptist Church. So please join us tomorrow morning. It should be interesting. Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem.
Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The Broadband Study Group will meet tomorrow, February 8th, in room 281, immediately following the session. Jeff Wick with WTC will talk about the opportunities for broadband in Kansas, and the independent rural telephone companies will be providing these. Thank you.
Representative Oren.
Hey, Mr. Speaker, Education Committee members, we will meet 10 minutes after House adjournment, after the state. 10 minutes after adjournment.
Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. House Public Safety Budget Committee. We will be meeting after the governor's speech today. We have budgets to vote out today, so please be as prompt as possible afterwards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture Committee, we will be meeting at 4 o'clock or 12 minutes after the speech is over, if it goes after 4 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Langler.
I may have to beat the previous representatives by doing it in 11 minutes. Social Services Budget Committee, we have on our agenda to meet at 4, but it will be 15 minutes from the time that the State of the State is over.
Representative Whipple.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Democratic Caucus, we will have agenda tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. That's 8:30 a.m. in our usual room. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sloan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Government Technology and Security Committee will be meeting at 5 o'clock in our usual room, 218 North, to continue the discussion of House Bill 2560. And members, those of you who are receiving those emails from the sheriffs and other law enforcement and county officials about us driving the local governance broke, the committee's fixing that stuff. So, you know, don't give it exercise until you see what comes out of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Just a reminder to members of the Johnson County delegation that the delegation lunch is currently taking place in room 144 South, and I urge you to attend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Another announcement, Representative Scott Schwab is hereby appointed to the Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee and also the Insurance Committee. Representative Stan Brownfeld will replace Representative Jerry Stoggsville on the House Commerce Committee, Commerce and Labor Committee for February 7, 2018 only. Is there any objection to returning that order of business and introduction of bills? Seeing none, the bill read.
House Bill number 2716 by Representative Judd Jenkinson Hoffman, an act regulating traffic concerning antique military vehicles relating to registration thereof.
Back on announcements, further announcements. Seeing none, Majority Leader Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 2:45 p.m.
You heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All the same. Motion passes. We are in recess.
Join us back here.